Okay, well, we're actually on YouTube Live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to BLAW Live. Good to have you with us here on this Tuesday evening. And we've been talking about for several weeks now about spiritual gifts and how do we actually deploy our spiritual gifts and what's the process by which we discover it. And now tonight, we're going to be talking about action. It's important that you take action, and it's important that we know once we get an understanding about what our gifts are, what's the next steps that we do in order to activate our gifts and see them actually come to life. So tonight, again, Pastor Virginia and I are going to be here tonight, and we're going to share just some real practical things. So we're going to be really getting practical. If you're watching tonight for the first time, we just want to let you know, thank you. And we ask that, just go back and you can look into the archives of our BLAW Lives, and you can actually check out the conversation that we've been having for the last several weeks to catch you up. And so tonight is going to be a night of action, and get online and share and tell people that we're online and join into the conversation. You can put your questions into the chat box. We'll see them and we'll answer your questions. So we like to have some interaction from you tonight. So please feel free to do that. We're going to be sharing resources, and we're going to be talking about some real practical things that we can do. So, so what do we got on? So what you got for us tonight? She got a big box of instruments and
My
measurements
goodies.
and evaluation and goodies and that kind of thing. So you're going to enjoy it tonight.
All right. Well, just to bring you up to date, we started first talking about our spiritual gifts. And if you haven't taken it yet, there's the SHAPE spiritual gifts assessment that you can take, and it will give you some basic information to help you to see what those are. And we also encourage you not just to stop at that assessment, but to also use some other assessment tools. We'll talk about that in a bit. But then last time we talked about your personal mission statement and how you can write one. And we talked about how your personal mission statement is generally driven by what makes you weep or pound the table. What are you passionate about? It also generally aligns with your talents and the skills that God has given you and put you here on earth to exercise. And so we talked about a three-pronged approach to your mission statement, which really, it first says that you have a broad mission statement, one that you share with everybody in the universe, but then it narrows down a little bit more where it begins to hone in on the things that God has asked of you to do, but then it hones down, it drills down even further, which ties in your unique talents and the gifts that you specifically have in the place that God has specifically called you to serve. And so today we want to talk about action. So we want to bring you to the next space to say, okay, I know my gifts, I know my mission, I understand my purpose in relationship to the ministry or even vocation. So your gifts aren't just limited to the church use, right, but also for your vocation. Quite often the jobs we have allow us to exercise the gifts, allow us to exercise the talents that we have. And then once you have that information and you have that knowledge, it's not just to put on a shelf, it's not just to put in a box, it's not just to sit with, but it's to activate, to put to use. So tonight we want to give you some really practical steps on activation. And the first step is part of the review, which is to take an inventory, to do the SHAPE. And again, those are listed. You'll see it also in our past episodes. You can see where to take the SHAPE and to take some of those inventories. And then the second step, again, we talked about is with the mission statement, and as well as with the SHAPE. Step one, to do the SHAPE. Step two, to do your personal mission statement. We want to encourage you, don't just process that yourself. It's good to talk to other people. If you have a spouse, if you're married, ask a spouse. If not, ask people that really know you. Is this me?
Yeah.
Does this sound like me? Because sometimes you can create a mission statement in isolation and people, that's not you. You want to get feedback. And some of that feedback will be critical. But understand that you can learn a lot from even sometimes your best critics are the best. That's the best information you can have. learn from critics and learn not to take things so personally. And so once you get that feedback from the mission statement as well as from your gifts, the third thing that we want to encourage you to do is to serve, to be intentional about how can I put these gifts into practice.
Yep.
So you want to talk a little bit more about service?
Yeah, so serving is really at the kind of like the foundation of really taking your gift, seeing it in operation, seeing what you really can do. It's like the muscle. You're never going to know what your muscles can do unless you start lifting some weights, unless you start exercising. So when you're thinking about your spiritual gift and trying to figure out, okay, well, what is it that I really have to offer? Well, service is a way of figuring that out. So as you're maybe volunteering or you're actually doing something hands-on, it really gives you an idea of what you're good at. There are some things that I've tried that I wasn't good at. And there's some things that I've tried that I'm pretty good at. So at least I know where my strengths are, but that all came into the kind of like being enlightened because I actually got involved in serving. And so service is really at the foundation of figuring out what your gifts are and finding out what you do best. And looking at kind of like from historical standpoint, all along, we as kids were encouraged to get involved in many different ways in serving, serving in church ministry to serving in just really practical ways. Serving could be something as simple as you're actually going to do a favor for somebody, and that favor might be, can you help me with a task,
right.
A very simple task. I knew back in, probably when I was like in the 4th grade, that I had a talent for music. So, I started to get nurtured in that area of music, started taking music classes, started to involve myself in bands, started to involve myself in different areas, and it was volunteer. It wasn't paid. There was no like these paid gigs. It was just volunteering. Right. But then I found out that I was good at music. So as I started to think about my own talents and my own abilities, I actually found out that I had those because I actually was involved in some type of service and doing it voluntarily.
And I think what you said is crucial, that as young people, as kids, because I know for us as well, we had the traditional piano lessons and you sang in the choir and we participated. We were active in church growing up. And so our parents were intentional about making sure that we served. And so I think that's something good for parents to make sure that their kids are serving in some way. Unfortunately, we're raising a generation that is used to receiving but not giving. Yeah. And so the issues of service so that's why community service became such a big deal in school, because schools ended up owning that component of service when that's actually a biblical component that we give. And it's not just that scripture is not just referring to our money. We're supposed to be giving of our talents. We're supposed to be giving of ourselves as living sacrifices. Yeah. So for us, we gave around the house. We all had chores. Yeah, that's a way of activating our gift. So I learned I like to clean. I like to put things in order. And so I learned that administration gift was coming out even as a child of my toys need to be in this place. Yes. My clothes need to be like this as a teenager. And so as you start serving, you serve at home and then serving at church and serving in places. And you serve even as a family, serving together. So that's why things like Salvation Army were important for our family. Also for our family, our kids served the neighborhood by shoveling the walkway of our neighbors, our elderly neighbors. So they did pay them and gave them cookies and stuff for it. But even if they weren't paid, that was something they did. We shoveled together as a family. Everybody had a shovel. Everybody raked leaves. Everybody did chores. So we learned how to serve in different capacities. And I think it's important, part of that activation process, once you identify your gifts, once you identify your mission statement, you got to serve. And now that we're in digital spaces, and for this season, and we know the vaccination is coming out, and it's out now, I should say. So there is a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. But even through this winter, they're still saying, even for Christmas, stay home, stay. How do we, what would you say to someone that says, okay, I've identified my gifts. How can I serve even in the space that I'm in right now? What would you say to them?
Service can be as simple as you just making phone calls to check up on people, to make sure that they're doing okay. Because, you know, there are people who really would like to be, you know, a phone call to be checked up on, or even be prayed with, to say, hey, I just want to check up on you, just have an opportunity to pray for you, or just see if you need anything.
Yeah.
There are people who need information. So what needs do they have, and what information do you have that you probably could offer them? And you can do that from the just comfort of your own home. And these are just different ways that you can serve, especially if you know where to get resources. You can do a lot with that by just helping people be able to find different areas of information or different things online. So if you know where things are online, you can just say, hey, let's text that up on the WhatsApp. Right. Hey, did you know that if you dial 211, you can find just about everything you need to find by dialing that number. Or you just create an opportunity for people to gather together, and maybe just say, hey, perhaps we just want to just have a meetup on Zoom. And you don't necessarily have to wait for the church to have a meetup on Zoom. You can say, hey, let's have a meetup on Zoom and just check in. So we've done that with a number of people already. Just just said, okay, we're not going to put it onto the bulletin, and we just said, hey, let's just call people and see how they're doing, and just say, hey, let's do a meetup on Zoom, send out the information. Okay, let's just get on it. So there's a number of ways that people can get involved and serve, and do a number of things that will help people and also strengthen their gift.
So the key in activation is the root word is active. And so we want to encourage you to don't be, as the song we sing in my worship, I will not be silent. Don't be inactive. That everyone, even if you're busy, even if you're working, I work a full-time job as well, but I'm making time I don't get to everybody every day, but I'm making time in my schedule to actively use my gift. Even sending cards to people. Yes, I'm still getting Christmas cards, which is great. And some of you have a gift of sending out cards. It's awesome. We just got a card in the mail the other day that while we can't see people, someone sent us a card with pictures of their grandchildren. And it's like, wow, look how big they are. And so that cheered us up, like just to see people that way. So I can't see you physically, but to see how the family's growing. Others of you are cooking. I know there's some people that are cooking and providing food for people. So wherever your gift is, and I want to encourage you to not just think of the activating and serving with your gift in the traditional ways. And I think this is where prayer really comes in, because we have to be open and willing to activate and to use our gifts differently. And I would even encourage you to use language that's different, instead of saying things like, I'm going to discover my gift, but say I'm going to discover and use my gift. And as you're praying, ask God for new ways of activating, for putting into service, so that your gift can be a blessing to the body. One of the, just an example that some of you that may have been watching BLAW Live for a while, of a gift being activated. We had interviewed Greg when we talked about gifts. And I remember when he came to me and he said, I want to do something for Children's Church. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to do for Children's Church? And so he had this vision of, I want to change it. And he had the paint colors, and he ordered the equipment, and he put his gift into use. He didn't sit and wait and say, okay, Pastor Virginia, this is what I see, you do it. And I think we're guilty of that sometimes, especially as for pastors and leaders of churches. Sometimes people see something and they have a vision for something. And if they go, okay, I want you to do it, or they bring a vision that's not fully baked, or they bring an idea that isn't necessarily a vision, it's an idea. And so when you start asking questions, well, how are you going to do it, and what's this going to look like, and who's on your team, sometimes all of those questions aren't answered. And that's why we're saying serve as you serve, and as you activate your gift, don't do it alone. Gather others, connect with others. So he connected with others and connected. He got the other children's workers together, and they picked out colors and put things together, and they just did an amazing job. But his gift was activated as a result of that, because he decided to serve. He decided to serve.
Yeah, and it really looks great. And one of the things that kind of occurs to me as as you talk about these different ways of service is that it's almost as though if you've been to a play, maybe one of the major plays, where even if it's down to like Christmas time over Nutcracker, that that's one of the plays that we watched as kids, and they took us on a field trip to see the Nutcracker. And if you've ever been in a play, there's what they call cues, and so when you have a part in a play, you have to listen to the person that's before you or has a certain line so that you know when to come in.
Right.
There's opportunities that come up, and sometimes we don't necessarily get that cue or even a clue that it's now our time to kind of step in and do something.
Right.
Sometimes it's moments where people might have a question of how to solve a problem that has occurred. And the Lord has either given you the talent or the ability or the knowledge to answer that question. That's your cue. You don't want to miss your cue. Right. That's a way of getting involved. That's a way of understanding that God can take you from one level to the next just because you came in at the proper time with the proper answer and the proper solution.
Right.
When I think about Joseph, he ended up in some really bad situations, of course, from going to the pit to going into prison for something he didn't do. But one thing that happened when Pharaoh was having these dreams, and he was having these visions of what was happening, and the skinny cows and the fat cows, he didn't know what was what.
Right.
Joseph had that gifting to interpret dreams. So when the time came, he was on cue. He said, okay, we know somebody that can interpret these dreams, so let's get him.
Right.
And he could have said, well, I don't think I really want to be participating today, or I don't think I really want to be maybe you can get someone else. I think there's a few other folks that can probably figure out what's going on with this this dream thing.
Right.
But he knew exactly when to step in, and that was the precursor for him to actually ascend to being, outside of Pharaoh. He was one of the most powerful men in Egypt to be overseeing the actual food supply of Egypt. And so when you think about how people get to certain places, and the scriptures are actually true, that a man's gift will make room for them.
Yes.
And it will bring them before great people.
Yes.
If we just use what we have and use our gifting, you never know who might be watching. You never know who might need that answer, or to need that service, or that what you're giving. And all of a sudden it brings you into another place that you go, wow, never thought that this really even mattered, but you had the right thing at the right time, and you were doing it in the right way, that someone was blessed by it, and they said, hey, you're the person I need, and you're the person I want.
Right. Because by serving, as Joseph served, even just serving in the prison, even just serving in his place, he was positioned to be able to do something else. So he wasn't fully doing all that he was called to do there, but his gifts, he was using the gifts that he had. And I think that's a key thing about serving. Some people are waiting for the big grand gift. And for I know for me, I didn't think about people like, how did you get to where you are, Pastor Virginia? And I'm like, I just served. Someone asked me to usher, I ushered. That's how I started out, ushering. And then, oh, you can sing. Pop said, oh, you can sing, Jen. You're going to be singing you're going to be singing next Sunday. I'm like, okay, I'm going to sing. I have the talent. Let me use it. So my mindset wasn't about comparing with other people. It wasn't about, I think I'm this big shot. It was, I have it. Let me use it. because I'd made a commitment to serve God no matter what. So for those of you just joining us, we're talking about activation and how do you get your gift activated. And so we've outlined the first step. We want to welcome you. And the first step is taking the shape and discovering what your spiritual gifts are. The second step that we've talked about is the mission statement. And we talked about that last week, writing out a personal mission statement. So you're clear. So you're not wandering and flying all over the place, but you're clear. This is what the ask is that the Lord is asking of me. Then the third step that we're on right now is serving, that you serve, use your gifts, serve. And that as you're activating, part of that activation is that you're not just sitting by going do and waiting for someone to even ask you. Even some things, someone didn't ask me. I went to someone and said, do you need help with this? Or can I do this? And we just talked about Greg, of how he said, I can do this. And so I love those kind of people that come and say, I can do this. Let me put my gift, let me add my gift to what's here. Let me elevate it even to another level. But they don't just sit idly by. And I think that's something even in this pandemic that we're seeing creative ways. People are serving in creative ways. So we want to encourage you to be creative about your service. Don't limit yourself. And even as things move post-COVID, to still be creative in your service. And not whether you're serving at home, serving in your community. And I know some of you serve actively in your communities, and that's great. People are serving on boards. People are serving in neighborhood groups. People are serving their cities, or they're serving in the state. They're serving in different nonprofits, or even in different ministries around. That's great. Don't just sit idly by. Do something. Put the gifts God has given you to use.
Yeah, it's kind of so simple, but it can kind of really like almost like pass you by, thinking that it has to be something really, really huge that you start doing.
Right.
And as you start serving, there's a lot of transferable skills that are in that as well, for you to do something that actually will pay you, some money. When I think about, how many times of just helping out, my cousin who's actually an electrician. And when I figured out, okay, well, what would that actually do? I never thought about that when I had to actually do some things around my own house.
Right.
It was some transferable skills that I could use. So when it comes to even doing work inside the church, and let's say being an usher, you can learn a lot of things by just being an usher, just working at looking at how do I better serve people and different types of people.
Yeah, customer
service.
It's
customer service is right there. So that as you're starting to learn how to do those different tasks and kind of really organizing and thinking through how do you serve people and anticipate what their needs are. That's a gift. That's hospitality. That's a lot of different skills that you can apply to actually positions and jobs, because you never know what might come up or what you might have to do that would take one of those skills and kind of turn it into some type of income for your family.
Right.
So it's important that you realize that service is something that will always benefit you in the long run through seasons of your life. If you have to make changes and kind of move from different things, going from here to there, whether it's from technology to just doing something in nonprofit, if you just learn how to serve, there's a lot of things that you could do in many different sectors.
And so it may seem like we're sitting here for a while, and we are sitting on service for a while, and not just within the four walls of the church, but serving. You're part of the body. There's a gift God has given you. There's a purpose for which he wants that gift to be used. And so we're encouraging you to find places of service. And if you're not sure, again, this is where community comes in. Ask others, see what's around you. Watching the news tonight, we heard about a lot of food insecurities. And I saw someone on Instagram just saying how they were blessed where they could pick up the phone and just call Amazon and order groceries. And they decided that they wanted to bless another family. And so they said, hey, if you know of anybody who's having some food insecurities right now, give me a call. I'm going to send them some groceries. And maybe that's what you can do. That it's that simple. And that's a gift, as Bishop said, of hospitality, of service. and seeing those transferable skills of that could bring in. And I think that's great that how you serve or the fact that you're serving can open doors for you to find other income streams. And we know that that's a challenge right now where we're at, is people finding other income streams. So the third step is service. But then we want to talk about the fourth step. The fourth step is stirring up the gift. In Timothy, Paul says to Timothy, stir up the gift that was given to you by the laying on of hands. So he's saying to Timothy, don't just sit there and just put your gift again on the shelf. Not only not use it, but he's saying, stir it up. Make sure that that gift is being refined and developed. And so over the years, even though we have the gift of communication, we didn't just sit and go, okay, we can talk. There are things that courses you can be a part of. There are other people we can learn from. That's what workshops and seminars and books and tapes and podcasts, all of these things are available to sharpen the gift. So we want to encourage you that once you have identified those gifts and you know the purpose, continually sharpen your gift. I still have to go to sessions and conferences and workshops. Even though I teach on leadership and youth ministry, I attend sessions to learn from other people because we don't know it all in ourselves. We can learn from other people. So you've got to stir that gift. You can't, it's kind of like, if you have peanut butter, the old school peanut butter that you used to get when you're on government assistance, that peanut butter would separate and you would have, and even now the new school peanut butter, because we're all eating healthier now, the new school peanut butter, you put it in the fridge and sometimes the oil separates from the actual peanuts itself. You can't just pour the oil on your bread. You have to stir those things together. You have to stir it. If you've got a salad dressing, oil and vinegar, you got to shake those things up so that they can work together. So in order for your gifts to really work and for you to really see them active, sometimes you got to stir it up. You want to say more on that, Bishop?
I think when it comes to stirring up the gift, really it really takes a connection with your passion. So that's really what he talked about, where Timothy was told by Paul. He said, Lord, stir up the gift that's in you, meaning fan the flames or fan whatever passions that you have. So how do you fan these passions that you have? Well, identify what the passions are, but then the question is, okay, well, where are people doing that thing that you're passionate about? Right. Sometimes it might be going to a conference or going to a space by which they're actually doing what you're passionate about. So let's say if you're an artist and you're very passionate about art, take some time and check out art, check out different types of art, where those artists congregating, where those people learning new skills or sharing their information. So even investing in conferences, I've invested in a lot of conferences over the years on different aspects of things that I'm passionate about. Books, of course, you mentioned podcasts, and there's a lot of ways that we need to fan our passion. And it does cost you something. It costs you time.
Yes, it does.
It costs you some money, perhaps, to even invest in that. So over the years, and even now, we invest in things that's really important to our passion. And I would say, well, even as we are on the end of 2020 and going into 2021, well, what are those passions that you have, and where might you take some time to invest yourself and invest your resources to actually learn more and expose yourself to people and expose yourself to information that can help you go further in that which you're passionate about.
And this is where mentors come in also. So Timothy had Paul, who was encouraging him, but also instructing him. And so I know I've been blessed. We've been blessed to have some good mentors. And mentors, how I like to tell people when they say, well, how can I find a good mentor? What do I look for in a mentor? I encourage people, know what you're looking for. Meaning, so I had mentors in my life that helped me to communicate better. So there are certain people that I watch, I glean from, and I reach out to and said, can you teach me some of your communication skills? There are others that I wanted to learn a particular skill from. And I looked at who's ahead of me in that area. And so while I do have a lot of peers, I needed a good mentor is someone who's ahead of you, who has demonstrated capacity in that area. You don't want to pick someone who can't tie two words together, and you're trying to be a good communicator, or you're trying to be a good cook, and you pick somebody who doesn't really cook. You really need that someone who can say, baby, no, you need maybe a cup and some of flour, because they just know it's some. They just kind of measure it out on their own, and they know. But working with that individual, they can help you to figure out, oh, this is how you do it. And you can learn from their expertise. And sometimes they can't tell you exactly how they do it, but watching them and getting the behind the scenes from them, you can get a great, learn a lot of tips from that person who's ahead of you. And then that person who's ahead of you will also give you some critiques. And again, I can't stress this enough. We got to learn to be thick-skinned, that when you're working with a mentor, sometimes it takes having some thick skin, because especially when you think you're doing it right, and you are doing it right, but they're trying to help you to move further. And so you have to be in a space of saying, let me not take this so personally, and let me learn from this individual so that they can help me to move forward. And different people will help you to learn and will stir that gift up in you differently, because each one of us have a different type of gift.
Yeah, and it's important that you practice.
Yes.
One of the things that really was kind of turned the light on in many times of kind of focusing and working really hard on what your passions are is when I read the book Outliers, and by Malcolm Gladwell. That was a very interesting book to just kind of read through that. How many times do people practice their craft? And they said, no, it's like 10,000 hours of investment in their craft and learning.
Explain that 10,000 hours.
Well, it's still kind of is the thought of, if you're investing 10,000 hours into a particular thing that you want to learn or craft that you have, you probably will become what might be called the expert at it. As you're starting to invest a lot of time into that and a lot of focus in it. So Malcolm Gladwell used one of the case studies of the Beatles and how they actually were just, doing their instruments and practicing and playing and 10,000 hours. And that's gave them the expertise and all the things that they needed to really become who they were.
Right.
So as you're thinking about your own craft and you're thinking about how many hours are you investing in it? How many hours do you really need to invest in that to really become very skillful at it? Sometimes it's talent that you have that people don't, some people can get it very quickly and they do it very easily, but even still, you probably could be better even if you just put more time into that. So it's a very important thing to make sure you invest in your passions and not just leave them for hoping that they'll grow and hoping that they'll become really honed in and focused and sharp and being able to use. So just note that it probably might cost you some effort, time, to be able to stir up that gift that you have in you.
And there's intentionality with that. So we hope you're really hearing that intentionality to really activate, to really stir that up. And you do it when you feel like it, and you do it when you don't.
When you don't feel like it.
And those are the disciplines. That's part of what Bishop's talked about as well, is moving from I desire to do this, and then you build those disciplines and to do it, and then you get to the place of delight. But often we want to start in delight, or we want to go from desire to delight, but the discipline in between often, I've met plenty of people who are good singers, but they don't discipline themselves. They're not warming up their voices. So they don't make it through the long haul. I met plenty of people who are gifted communicators, but they don't want to read. They don't want to study. They don't want to hone in on their craft. They just think, oh, I can do this because I'm gifted. I'm naturally. And sometimes that's actually can be a problem. That's kind of what they call the curse of the gifted, that generally that gift that you have that you can do with your eyes closed, you can do it in blink, and you can do it, without any effort. Sometimes that can be dangerous because we rely on ourselves. We don't pray. We don't ask God. And so even though it is a gift, it doesn't necessarily have that spiritual gift behind it because we're working it in our own flesh. and we're not stirring up the gift. We're not adding to our faith, as the scriptures also tell us about adding to our faith, virtue and knowledge, and we've got to keep adding and keep growing. So I like to encourage people. So yeah, it's great. You can do this. Now let's stretch you. And we talked about this a bit last night with the women. How in this season of COVID, we're being stretched. But how are you stretching yourself in your gifts? So if we were to ask you a question, if for those of you that have identified your gift and identified the purpose, how are you stretching yourself to grow in that? So how, even in this space where we've been home, what have you done to hone that gift and to really sharpen it? So where's the other iron that you found that can sharpen your iron so that you are even so fine-tuned even in that area, and you keep moving from glory to glory to glory?
Yeah, one of the things that can inspire you to do that is just if you're a sports enthusiast. I'm a sports enthusiast. I like different types of sports, and I follow different athletes in different sporting genres. And one of the athletes that, of course, I grew up watching in the era of the Larry Bird, the Magic Johnson, of course, Michael Jordan. And so they came out with a movie, and I'm sure you heard about it. It's called Last Dance by Michael Jordan and the Bulls. And it really focuses on how Jordan's work ethic and how his focus was in terms of being who he was as a basketball player. And so while he had amazing talent, he would actually put in so much effort into his basketball that he was just so incredible and so disciplined. So you had to at least see that it just wasn't a natural talent that he had or natural ability that he had. Certainly he had great athletic ability, but much of that ability was kind of honed because he kept stirring that, had that passion in him to want to win and that passion to want to be better. So as you start looking at your own gifts and abilities, put in that time, put in that effort and that discipline to continue growing, and you'll get to the point where you'll say, you know what, I know I can be better in this, and I know I can get better in that, and I know I can get better in that. Yeah. And as that fuels your passion, you're going to start seeing more and more of your gift and more of your abilities start to shine. So if you have a question, please put in chat box. Question that we have here is, how do you start writing your mission statement, and how long should it be?
Great question. So I would encourage you to start to, again, first pray, always birth these things in prayer, and to write down key words. So key words in your mission statement. So if you're passionate about praying, you might write down the word prayer. If you're passionate about helping people, you might write down helping people. So write down key words that are just important to you. These are some key words. And then after continuing to pray, looking at those keywords, if you had to describe yourself, now some of you may have done this exercise in school where you have to write your own obituary, and what would you want people to say about you? And generally that's the area of your focus. And so you would then take a look at it. Now, some people can say your mission statement can be a page long. I am an advocate that your mission statement should be like an elevator speech. You should be able to say it, an abridged version of it anyway, in a sentence or two. My mission in life is to, and if we follow the example of Jesus, seek and save the lost. His name is Emmanuel, God with us, but Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. So, and we're all supposed to be disciples of Jesus. So that is an element of it, but that's how I would encourage you, is to start with keywords first. And then think about what is it that you want to most be remembered by, and then begin to shape those words together into a sentence or two. And it's okay if you start out with that page-long paragraph, or and if you have a whole bunch of words. I know some people that started out and they had a page or a page and a half or 2 pages of phrases that they wrote down. Then I asked them to group those phrases together, because quite often, once you get past half a page, you're just repeating the same thing. You're just saying it differently. But for others that have a holistic mission statement, some might say my mission is to be a good parent, good spouse, good, and you can, and they'll give detail on that. But so you might have a holistic mission statement of this is my family life, this is my vocational life, this is my ministry life. But even if you look at that, you'll see some common threads. So I would say, again, start with the key phrases, key words. Actually start with prayer, number one, then start with key phrases and key words, see what the relationship is, and then think about how is it I want to be remembered, and then begin to craft that into a statement that it can be upwards to a paragraph, maybe a page. I would not encourage you to go more than a page, because again, you're going to start saying the same thing. So hopefully that's helpful. I don't know what you want to add to that.
One thing about resources, as you start thinking about putting together a mission statement, you can look at this book that I got, was very helpful. It's called Living Forward by Michael Hyatt. Living Forward by Michael Hyatt, where he breaks up life into what he called 9 accounts. Mm-hmm. And so as you're listing up your 9 accounts, your web account is your family, mm-hmm. your personal life, your finances. Mm-hmm. And as you're listing on your personal accounts, he asked the question, well, what is it that you desire to have, and mm-hmm. what do you decide to do? And as you're starting to reflect upon those areas become integrated. So it's not something over here and something over there. Right. Because sometimes when people look at mission statements or their mission, they're not considering the whole pie. Mm-hmm. They're only looking at maybe, oh yeah, this is kind of what I want for my money, but they haven't really addressed what they want for their health. Right. So as you're looking at this book, Living Forward, he goes by one principle after another mm-hmm. to help you to look at your 9 areas, mm-hmm. 9 account areas. And then he asks you, what's the motivation, or why do you want those things that you're writing down? Right. And then as you're doing that, it helps you to form, this is what I'm about. And these are the goals that I'm actually going to strive for, because mm-hmm. you also have to write down your goals. And I'm hoping that even though we're in this season where, of course, we are complying with many of the restrictions because of COVID, that you're not just kind of scrapping everything and just saying, well, this is kind of one of those years that we're just going to just kind of count as just kind of take a lap around and not really achieve anything. But there are goals that we still can achieve, and there are things that we still can do to be better in certain areas of our lives. So I would say read that book. That is a great book, Living Forward by Michael Hyatt.
And hopefully, and again, once you craft that mission statement, run it by a couple of people and ask them, does this make sense? Do you see this in me? Be open for feedback, because nothing should be done in isolation. And that statement, and then they'll go, oh yeah, that's you. It's kind of like, I go shopping at times with family, and when we go shopping together, somebody might pull out something and say, what do you think about this? And we'll go, oh no, that's not you, that's so-and-so. Or we'll go, oh yeah, that's you. When you are working with someone who really knows you, they can hear your mission statement and go, yeah, I see that. I can see that. And so don't be afraid to even ask them, help you wordsmith it, because you might have this word and they might go, no, this word is better to better describe you. So again, don't do anything in isolation. So we as a recap again, and we've got one more step to give you, that for activation, we're saying, how do you activate these gifts and these mission statements? Well, first, we obviously began with prayer. This whole process is bathed in prayer. And you may sound like, oh, you keep saying that. Yes, because you don't want to do anything without the power of the Holy Spirit. Right. It's the power of God, and faith and love come together, and you can really move by the power of God. So first, we're saying, take a spiritual gifts inventory, get some information, find out what are those gifts, begin to identify them. Then ask those around you, do these gifts, is this me? Do you see me? And then even ask yourself, do I enjoy? Because I know there's some gifts that I have that don't necessarily bring me joy. And there are other gifts that bring me great joy. It's like, oh, I just love doing this. I forget about time. It doesn't bother me. No matter the conditions, whether I feel like it or not, I'm going to do it because I'm called to it. So first, identifying your gifts. The second step, we said, talk about writing a mission statement, being clear about a personal mission statement. Yes, it should align with the ministry and the job and those other areas, but we're talking about a personal mission statement, not just your job's mission statement. Then third, we said to serve, to be proactive. So maybe you're still in the process of trying to identify those gifts. Start serving, because that helps you to go, no, I thought I liked working with young people. I don't know, that's not me. I want to try some older people, or I want to work in this area. And that's sometimes, for some people, it's process of elimination. Some people stumble into their gifts by that as well. Then fourth, we talked about stirring up the gift, that once you've identified the gift and you're serving and you're being active, that you be intentional about fanning that flame, as Bishop talked about. We have a fireplace, and we love sitting by the fire. And when the fire begins to go down, you have to fan that flame. You've got to add some more oxygen to it. So think about, as you're stirring that gift that's within you, you're using it, but you're also feeding it and making sure that it grows, and that you don't stay, as the Bible scriptures also talk about, as one that's on milk. You want to move to being in the meat of the word and being able to handle some difficult things. And then last but not least, the fifth step is evaluate. And this can be a difficult space because we don't like evaluation. But understand that even in scriptures, we see times of evaluation. And Bishop, you want to talk about that, evaluating?
Well, evaluation is just basically how you're taking a measurement. You probably heard this saying before, what gets measured gets done.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't take any kind of measurement, you really don't know how you're doing. You don't really know if what you're doing is
Mm-hmm.
even being effective or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to measurements, we don't like measurements because sometimes we have to deal with the brutal reality of, this is the facts. These are the facts.
Right.
But in another way, by taking a measurement, and a measurement could just be an inventory. A measurement could be, okay, I set out a goal to do these particular things and accomplish this particular thing.
Right.
Well, am I hitting that goal, or am I not hitting that goal?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And having other people, and asking them, well, what did you think about this particular task that I've done, or what I've completed? Is it, do you think it's better, or what do you think about that? So when it comes to actually evaluation, there's a self-evaluation that we have to do, and I think that it's good to do. And I think it's good to also journal. So I'm trying to learn how to do a little bit more better at my journaling, and just kind of think about, okay, well, what are the things that's happened? What are the things that need to be accomplished? Trying to hold myself accountable, and other people to hold me accountable for things I need to actually do, setting dates and deadlines and goals. That helps me prioritize, because I can't do everything. And, being the multitask king at one time, and just having all these different balls in the air. And so we kind of really had to stop and think, well, what is it that I'm really supposed to be doing? What needs to get done? And what can be what is something that I could actually either do later or not at all, because it's really not going to help me get where I need to get, or get done what I need to get done. So it's a evaluation really has to help all of us in a number of ways to do our best. And we should be giving our best for the Lord. That's a requirement for worship. That's a requirement that he had in the Old Testament, that you couldn't bring this, if you had to bring a sacrifice, you couldn't say, hey, well, this sacrifice, this lamb was going to die anyway. He was sickly, so I can sacrifice that before the Lord. The Lord said, don't bring me that. You need to bring me the best sacrifice that you have. So in order to bring the best sacrifice that you had, you had to evaluate. Right? You have to evaluate, well, what is the best sacrifice that I have, so that you can give God the best that you have. So when it comes to evaluation, we should always be mindful of where we're at, and that happens just by taking an honest look at measurements.
And I think it's important to, it's hard sometimes when you evaluate something, because sometimes we look at the value of it and we self-identify with that value. And it's hard sometimes because it's like, especially if you've been doing something for a long time. I remember when one of our young adults asked me a question, why do we keep doing this? And it's like, because we've always done it. And then I caught myself saying, oh, I've become one of those people, versus having a clear purpose. And this young adult really challenged me. And I had to pause and go, you know, you're right. We need to look at it. Why are we doing this? Is it, and that's what COVID has done for us, is it's been a clear disruption. It's been a clear change in what we've done. And some of us are longing to go back to what we did before. Perhaps this is God's invitation to us to do something different. Perhaps this is God's invitation to us to evaluate. Well, you know, some things, yeah, we will go back and do. But some things, they've served their season, they've served their time. And so this process of evaluation, so you may say, well, how to evaluate? Well, how to evaluate is to, I would again ask you to pause and to pray and ask the Lord, these things that I'm engaged in, that I'm doing, are these some of the things I should be doing? And if so, is this how you want me to do it? If not, and then to talk to others. This is where your peers, where those in ministry that you trust, this is where mentors come in, and it's the good time of year. Some people call it New Year's resolutions. I don't necessarily subscribe to New Year's resolution.
Right.
I think we need to be evaluating all year. One of the systems that I like to use is a Michael Hyatt system, as Bishop talked about. He has a planner and a journal that helps you to look at your year. And so at the beginning of each year, we sit down and say, through this planning system, he says you should identify no more than 12 goals that you want to do each year. And it's no more than 3 to 4 goals per each quarter. So in quarter one, this is what I want to accomplish, quarter two. And so I look at that, and that helps to drive my agenda, and it helps me to plan my time. Like in Psalms, I believe it's 90, that says, teach me to number my days that I can apply my heart unto wisdom. So we can make right decisions. We can have right actions. We can have, I should say, godly actions and godly decisions if we pause to plan. Most of us don't plan. We're just kind of shooting by the hip.
Yeah.
And so there are things that I planned to do that I didn't get done this year, but there are things I didn't plan to do that I did get done this year. And so my evaluation process now is, here's my plan. This is what happened. This is what didn't happen. Now I can tweak. And part of that process is, as I look at my list and look at the goals that I set, and to then ask others. So if you're married, you should do that with your spouse and say, okay, what are we going to do? Because while we have collective goals, well, we have individual goals, I should say, we also have family collective goals, things that we want to accomplish financially. We wanted to do some remodeling on our house, and there were things we had agreed to do, and we made adjustments along the way. Is some things happened and some things didn't happen, and we made adjustments, but there was a plan there. So, and then we also incorporated other family members and other trusted friends. We asked them their opinion. Okay, give us your counsel on this. This is what I'm considering. So part of that evaluative process, again, don't do it alone. In the multitude of counsel, there is safety. There are too many Christians that are out there doing things by themselves with no feedback, but also no accountability. So when you give someone permission to evaluate you, you're actually placing yourself in an accountable position. And sometimes that's awkward. That's hard for people because we like to do what we like to do. But God calls us. God created the earth and community. Let us make man in our image. Let us. And so he invites us to do the same. So for those of you that aren't in community, that are used to flying solo and flying alone, I would encourage you to evaluate yourself and ask yourself the question, why do I like doing things alone? Am I afraid of getting hurt? I know for me, I was hurt in the past by people, and I was like, I just gonna do it myself. And the Lord's like, no, I've called you into community. So I had to relearn, I had to unlearn some things and relearn how to submit to people and relearn how to work with others and give them permission to speak into my life, and in turn, earn permission to speak into the lives of others. So I encourage you that during that evaluative process, again, none of these steps are done in isolation. You may begin with you and God, but it should always end with others, because we're a part of a body, and God calls us to that place of unity. That's where the place of strength, and that's the place of power.
Yeah, and I think evaluations come in different stages as well.
Mhm,
There could be evaluations at different intervals. So
mhm,
when we come and we share our services online, one of the good things about this type of presentation, we started out not knowing even how to think
mhm,
about, well, what are we going to do now that we don't meet as a congregation? How do we really serve the body and serve our congregants with the word and give them an opportunity to experience worship
mhm,
when we didn't really have any real streaming outlet at
mhm,
all.
mhm,
And so as Tonya came along, she had the gifts and abilities to kind of
mhm,
say, hey, here's some of the things that we can do, you know. And I'm like, okay, I'm speaking to a camera. I'm not talking to really anybody.
mhm.
And I'm like, well, how do you talk in front of a camera when there's nobody there? I
Right,
did some things before, but it wasn't like a every Sunday thing.
right, right,
And I thought it was like, okay, well, 2 months of this and it'll be, we'll be back to normal. And here we are.
right.
We're into our ninth to 10th month,
Mhm,
and it's going to be probably a year before we even start even
mhm.
be able to meet in the sanctuary and not even in the same way.
Right, right.
So it's going to be here to stay.
Mhm.
And of course, when we started, it was like, okay, you got the phone. I think that was the first message was on a
Right,
phone.
right, right,
It's like,
right.
okay, here we are. We're on Facebook Live. Hi,
Mhm,
how are you? Well, here's the message. Here's the word for the day. And then we have to work our way up. But each and every time,
mhm.
short end of it is that each and every service that we had people tell us, well, this one didn't go well, and that didn't go well,
Right,
and the sound wasn't that well, and the
right,
picture didn't that well, and it started to buffer and
right,
da 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 da
right,
da,
right,
and it was kind of like, this is kind of going really really uphill.
right.
But basically, we kind of hung in there with the evaluations
Mhm,
and
mhm.
started to continue improvement. And we're still evaluating. So each
Right,
and every time
right.
that we have a time of worship online,
We're learning.
we're learning, and we
Mhm,
go. As soon as it's over, we said, okay, we're going to meet and we're going to evaluate.
mhm,
We're gonna take inventory
mhm,
of what we did, and hopefully we're getting better. Hopefully
mhm.
we're serving better, and
Right,
hopefully we're going to get better than where we are now, because that's what we're determined to do.
right.
So if that's something that you know you need to know about this whole idea of really making your gifts and putting in an operation, taking action.
Mhm,
Evaluation
mhm,
helps you to get better,
mhm,
and it's going to help you to really get to a place where you're seeing the fruit of what God has put into your life
mhm.
manifested.
All of these steps work with humility and work in love. So I want to encourage you to be humble, make sure your heart is right before God and your brothers and sisters, and to operate in love so that when all is said and done, we serve out of love. We discover our missions. We use our gifts out of love. And it's not about us. It's about serving others. It's about connecting to others in the body and serving God, the audience of one. So we don't do it for men's applaud. We don't do it to be seen. We don't do it because our name's going to end up in lights. We're going to blow up on YouTube and have thousands of followers. But we're being obedient to the call of God, and we serve and love Him as we love others, love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And then, as Christ said, that third level of love is to love others like how He loved us. And so we just encourage you with all of these gifts. I know we didn't pause to ask you for questions, but if you do have a question, feel free to throw it in the chat. We'll try to take care of it before we end up. We did have a question or two that we did answer. And so I just want to encourage you that if this is something, if activation is a space where you're stuck, pray, but also talk to other people and give them permission to speak into your life so that you can become activated in the gifts that God has given to you.
And if you put something together, whether it's a mission statement
Mhm.
and you want somebody to read it,
Yeah.
we're glad to read it.
Mhm.
And you want to send it to us by email, you can do
Mhm.
that. You can send it to blaw@aoccam.org. We'll take a look at it and give you
Mhm.
some our thoughts on it.
Mhm.
And any other things that you might want to know and resources that we've used to harness and focus our giftings,
Mhm.
because we've done a lot of different
Mhm.
analysis and tests and enneagrams and
Right.
and Myers-Briggs and just a number of them. And I think you have quite a number of them over there, that some resources that you can show them. So you have some resources that you want to show them?
Well, just a number of, as Bishop said, a number of the assessments that we've done and that we're going to do. Actually, I just put it this way, that in January, you'll hear more about, as Bishop has mentioned, that we will start a leadership type of training. I shouldn't say type of training, a leadership training. And I don't want you to say, well, I'm not a leader, I can't be a part of it. All of us are called to lead ourselves first, because before you can lead other people, you got to lead yourself first. And so we will be sharing some resources with you and putting and helping you to grow and to learn in that. Also, there'll be others that are a part of ALC and even outside of ALC that will be a part of that leadership development training space. And so that we want all the gifts within ALC. We've got a lot of gifts and other gifts that we're connected to, and people who can help sharpen you and help you to grow and help you to manifest all that God has placed within you. So it's not just going to be Bishop and I, there'll be others that will be a part of this and help you to grow and to develop. So just know that those will be coming as a part of that.
Yeah, and leadership is so important as it relates to your gifting as well, because it really demands that you have some understanding of what it really means to lead yourself and intentionally move forward. And I say intentionally because obstacles are going to be there. Mental blocks are going to be there. Circumstantial blocks are going to be there. But you have to have the understanding that, you know what, as a leader, you have the ability and the capability to overcome a lot of these things that seem to hinder us from going forward. And if you know how to lead yourself better, you'll see how that helps you to stay motivated and going forward in your vision, as well as your gifts being operative in many different arenas. So that's what we have for tonight. And so I want to thank you so much for being a part of BLAW Live. Thank you, Pastor Virginia, for being on with us and being a part of this discussion as we talked about spiritual gifts, and we just shared even how to activate those. And so I pray that this will be a really powerful series that you can really work on and have something where even in the coming year that at least gives you something to work on, even to work towards in the coming year. And so we praise God for you. Thank you for being a part of this, and also share with somebody. I know that tonight maybe they couldn't be on, but maybe you know someone that would really benefit from what we shared over these several weeks, and you can just tell them to tune in. They'll be posted on the church's website. You go to alccambridge.org, and you can go there to the resources, and you can see the archives of BLAW Lives, and so that's where it will live. So I want to thank Tony McGrath for putting all of this together for us and really making sure that all the technical aspect of the BLAW Live is working properly, and that you're getting information and you're getting all the notifications that we're on. And so thank all of you for this great opportunity that we have on Tuesday nights to share. And so with that, we say God bless you. May the Lord's face, may he shine upon you. Yes. May he be gracious to you. May he give you peace, his shalom, his kindness, his love. And may even this closing out of the year, we only have so many days left. May this be still has an opportunity to be the greatest year ever. And also as you start up in the next year, may you be a person of mission, be a person of purpose, and have your gifts stirred up and be used by the Lord in some very significant ways. So thank you, and good night. Have a blessed evening. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.